They said Earth was late to the stars. Primitive, behind. A curiosity among interstellar empires that waged wars with particle disruptors and fought across gravity-bent battlefields. To the Galactic Coalition, humanity was an antique species, admitted into fold more for diplomatic balance than military necessity. Still, when the Coalition faced growing losses against a Varnak swarm, Earth was called upon, if only to show symbolic unity. Sergeant Isaac Voss stepped off the shuttle onto the dust-blasted surface of Dagon 4, his boots crunching on orange gravel still warm from orbital bombardment. He was tall, lean, wrapped in matte desert camo that clashed with the shimmering alloy of alien exosuits around him. Slung across his back was a long black rifle with visible mechanical levers and a bolt-action system that looked like it belonged in a museum. It drew stares and laughter. That thing shoots slugs or nostalgia? One of the alien officers quipped, his transliterator rendering the mockery in a smooth, synthetic accent. Voss didn't respond. He didn't need to. The humans behind him, 6 soldiers, all with various loadouts of kinetic weapons and analog gear, wore the same blank expressions. Earth's best, Ghost Division, specialists in outdated warfare. The briefing was held in a mobile command hub, a half-buried dome blinking with holographic maps and data feeds. The Coalition commander, an 8-limbed creature from the Zeltari species, stood at the center, surrounded by alien tacticians. The Varnak have infested the mining colony beneath Ridge 7, it said, mandibles clicking softly between words. Standard plasma units have failed to breach their outer shell. EM pulse grenades proved ineffective. We suspect biological adaptation. One of the humans raised an eyebrow. You mean they've grown immune to your weapons? The Zeltari paused. Adapted, yes. Their hive organism processes battle intel in real time. Plasma burns are now dispersed across their dermal mesh. Your projectile weapons will be of limited value. Then why call us in? Voss asked, voice low and steady. Because you humans possess something unexpected. And frankly, desperate times demand risk. You've been assigned to support Sector 4's push tomorrow at 05. The human team dispersed quietly afterward. Coalition soldiers watched them go, murmuring through neural links. Primitive, reckless, relics of a less evolved species. Later, as twilight dimmed Dagon's sky into violet dusk, Voss knelt on the edge of a cliff overlooking the arid valley, where Ridge 7 slouched in the distance. Through a compact scope, he mapped terrain folds and thermal layers with a pencil on paper. No drone swarms, no digital overlays. Just wind readings, dust velocity, and time of flight. You always do this? Asked a voice behind him. Voss glanced back. It was Lieutenant Sarek, a Sithri tactician encased in gleaming armor and bearing a plasma lance across his back. Do what? Voss replied. Pretend your instincts are more accurate than our sensors. Your sensors failed. I'm planning to succeed. Sarek's eyes flickered, a subtle biological blink of offense. I reviewed your Earth tactics. Your wars involve days of hiding, hours of waiting, and reliance on projectiles that require gravitational compensation. You truly believe that will matter against enemies who evolve every time they're wounded? Voss stood, stretching his legs. You ever watch the Predator stop breathing for 3 minutes to take a shot that matters? Sarek didn't answer. The night before deployment was quiet. The human squad checked and rechecked gear. No one spoke much. Every bullet was hand-loaded. Cases lined in velvet within their packs. Analog radios clicked softly, untraceable by the Varnak. They carried no active emissions, no heat signatures, only patience. At dawn, the Coalition forces surged forward in gleaming formations, bolstered by AI-controlled artillery and drones that hummed in vertical stacks above them. Voss and his team didn't follow. They remained behind, scaling a dry ridge that curved west of the colony. From there, he unfolded his bipod and settled behind the scope, his eye narrowing to a dot of clarity. Below, the first screams began. The Varnak swarmed out of the rock like an oil spill, sleek bodies coated in armored chitin that shimmered with refracted light. Plasma fire lit up the battlefield, but the bugs didn't fall. The shots glanced off. Some were absorbed. Coalition lines broke. Units fell back in confusion. Sarek's voice echoed over the channel. Strained. Requesting fire support. Sector 4 is compromised. Repeat, Sector 4. Voss didn't wait. He adjusted the dial on his scope, checked wind with a flutter cloth tied to barrel, and exhaled. One shot cracked through the valley. It punched through the head of a Varnak lieutenant mid-charge, splattering dark fluid over the beast behind it. They recoiled, surprised. Two more shots followed, shattering thoraxes, breaking leg joints, cracking shells. Then silence, an unnatural pause in the chaos as Varnak forces hesitated, unsure what had just happened. Up in the rocks, Voss slid another round into the chamber. On the comm, Sarek's voice returned, quieter this time. Was that you? Voss didn't reply. The rifle answered for him. The aftermath of the first volley was a ripple in time. Brief, disorienting, but impossible to ignore. Coalition troops stared across the battlefield where plasma had failed and one man, one gun, had altered the rhythm of combat. For a fleeting moment, the Varnak hesitated. They were creatures bred for relentless forward motion, unbothered by attrition. But death delivered in silence, from unseen angles and with unfamiliar precision, that disturbed them. Sergeant Isaac Voss chambered another round, his hands moving with the certainty of muscle memory. Below, fire teams regrouped, galvanized by the opening he'd carved. Lieutenant Sarek's voice returned on the comms, less clipped now, laced with something bordering on respect. Human, you open a breach along the ridge flank. We're pushing. Voss didn't answer. He adjusted his scope, mapped the swarm's shifting vectors, and picked out the next target. A larger Varnak, with ridged armor and a cluster of twitching sensory nodules on its back. Likely a command node. He waited, timing the creature's rhythmic gait, then fired. The bullet struck just beneath the plate, where armor met flesh. The Varnak's body spasmed, collapsed, and thrashed like a puppet with its strings cut. The creatures around it scattered again, reorganizing, confused. Another moment of disruption. Another chance. The Ghost Division had long since separated from the main force. While the Coalition advanced with thunder and fire, Voss and his team ghosted through terrain like whispers. Sergeant Renna took high ground south of the colony ruins, spotting and marking targets with old-fashioned laser optics. Corporal Idris laid claymores in natural choke points. No drones, no AI, just footfalls, breath control, and precision. We've got heat bloom. Renna's voice crackled through analog static. 200 meters below the refinery shell. Something big. Voss shifted, swept the scope, and found it. An armored creature twice the size of the others, dragging a swollen carapace with what looked like vents or hatches blooming along its spine. It's a birthing drone, he said quietly. They're reinforcing in real time. How many? Too many. Across the valley, alien platoons were faltering again. The Varnak had found rhythm. Their adaptability was on full display. The outer carapaces of newer units shimmered differently, refracting plasma into harmless arcs. The Sithri weapons whined uselessly as beams skated off their targets. For every alien fallen, 2 Varnak emerged from the drone's venting body. They're learning, Sarek hissed over comms. Our targeting software isn't recalibrating fast enough. We're losing entire fire teams. Voss didn't hesitate. Send coordinates. I'll handle it. You can't. The armor's too thick. Not even our artillery cracked them. I'm not your artillery. He adjusted elevation, windage, and loaded a round marked with red band. Tungsten core anti-material, designed for armor piercing at long range. It wasn't smart. It wasn't guided. It was brute force disguised as precision. Time slowed. He steadied his heartbeat, counted the breaths between gusts of wind, watched the thermal shimmer above the colony's skeletal framework. The drone had turned, exposing a momentary seam at the base of its hatch. That was the shot. He fired. The rifle kicked against his shoulder like a living thing. The round soared, cutting through 2 layers of metal, and buried itself in the soft underplate. A second later, the drone erupted in a spray of green fluid and twitching limbs. The stream of Varnak reinforcements stopped. Coalition channels went silent for a beat, then erupted. Cheers. Disbelief. Some didn't understand what had happened. only that something impossible had been done. He killed it, Rena whispered. That shot wasn't even on a flat vector. He threaded it through crosswind and debris. Sarek's voice returned, measured but no longer condescending. What system does your weapon use? Some kind of kinetic smart round. No system, Voss replied. Just math, gravity, and patience. The battlefield shifted after that. Coalition troops began syncing with Ghost Division's analog readings. They turned off their sensors, started using manual sight lines and acoustic triangulation. Voss became an anchor, calling positions, reading terrain, predicting swarm flows based on heat dispersion and shadow movement. What began as curiosity from the aliens turned to reliance, and then something deeper. Human, Sarek said on a private channel, you must teach us this form of warfare. These non-digital tactics. You read the field as if the dust speaks to you. It does, Voss said, if you stop drowning in your own signals and listen. Night began to fall again, casting long shadows across the valley. Fire smoldered where the refinery once stood. The swarm had retreated deeper underground for now, severed from a node they didn't know how to replace. But it was only a lull. The Varnak would return. They always returned. Voss lay on the ridge, watching the horizon through his scope. He felt the weight of expectations settling in, thousands of lives leaning on an old rifle, and a man who never trusted machines to think for him. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He just waited. The next morning arrived without light. Dagon's sun remained hidden behind a churning dust storm that turned the sky a dull, oppressive gray. The wind howled across the fractured valley, dragging particulate grit over armor, optics, and rifle barrels. It was a battlefield smothered in silence and static, difficult for drones, fatal for satellites. But for Isaac Voss, it was familiar. Ghost Division crouched beneath a half-collapsed scaffold near the outer rim of the ridge, their analog scopes fogged but still functional. No words passed between them. They all knew what the shifting wind meant. Something was coming. Lieutenant Sarek transmitted on a tight beam channel, distorted by the storm but intelligible. Varnak activity detected in the submines. We believe they're preparing another surge. This time, we've identified a class we have not seen before. Voss lifted his scope, swept across the wasteland in careful, deliberate arcs. Through the storm's veil, movement stirred. A lumbering mass too large to be infantry, too slow to be a swarm. When it emerged from the ruined refinery, the ground trembled, even through the layers of debris and heat distortion. Its scale was undeniable. It was a hive beast. The Coalition had rumors, fragmented reports from glass moons and failed outposts, but no confirmed footage. Until now, the creature stood 3 stories tall, a grotesque hybrid of biological muscle and obsidian armor. Its legs resembled tree trunks coated in razor thorns. Its back bristled with living turrets that seemed to breathe and blink. Along its thorax, massive vents expelled gusts of spore-laced steam. Command want to retreat, Sarek said. They're rerouting dropships for emergency extraction. It's not just the armor we can't lock on. It bends energy signatures. Voss exhaled through his nose. Then don't use energy. You think a kinetic shot will pierce that thing? No, he said, lifting the rifle from his cradle and resting it across his knees. I think the right shot will. There was no bravado in his voice, no swagger, just certainty. He opened a weather-worn case and selected a single round. It was hand-loaded back on Earth, a uranium-core sabot with precision-cut jacket, forged for mass and velocity, not elegance. Voss slid it into the chamber with the reverence of a monk loading scripture into a sacred press. I'll need elevation, he said to his team. High enough to arc the shot. 5 miles, maybe 6. There's a stone rise northeast past the second trench. Renan nodded. That area has been crawling with scouts. Won't matter. They'll be dead before they report back. He set off alone, the rifle strapped across his back, the storm pushing against him like a living thing. It took 23 minutes to reach the rise, climbing through fractured stone and loose gravel. There were moments when the wind nearly took him down, but he pressed on, every movement practiced and quiet. At the summit, he unfolded the tripod, adjusted the legs, and lay prone. The beast loomed in the valley below, moving slowly toward a command outpost where the last of the Coalition personnel scrambled to evacuate. Voss checked the scope. Too much distortion. He switched to a secondary lens. Thermal adaptive. Filter for particle dispersion. The air shimmered with heat streams, wind vortexes, and thermal layering from the burning refinery ruins. Nothing about the shot was stable. He smiled. For a moment, the world narrowed. He adjusted for elevation, barometric shift, wind shear, and gravitational decay over distance. His fingers danced across the rifle's dials without looking. Behind him, no squad, no drones, no AI. Just breath, just time, just one bullet. He found the mark just beneath the third breathing vent, where the plating overlapped. An error in symmetry. A manufacturing flaw in a creature that wasn't supposed to be manufactured. That was the target. He inhaled, slow and deep. He held it and fired. The round departed without sound, swallowed by the wind. It curved gently through the storm, arcing over stone pillars and burned metal, slipping between gusts as if the storm itself parted to let it pass. It took 7 seconds to reach its target. The impact was instant and total. The hive beast stopped. A sharp, violent tremor rippled through its limbs. Then it crumpled forward, collapsing in a heap of twitching limbs and ruptured organs. The vent cavity hissed violently before a backdraft ignited something deep inside, blooming into a blue-white flame that consumed half its upper frame. The Varnak paused, every one of them. Across the valley, they shuddered, linked by hive consciousness that now screamed in confusion. The air was suddenly filled with their cries, high and mournful, like the howl of broken instruments. They began to retreat, slowly at first, then chaotically. Without the hive beast, their collective was fragmented, scattered, vulnerable. Coalition comms lit up with disbelief. "You killed it," someone shouted. "From where?" "I didn't even see the flash. What weapon is that?" Voss didn't respond. He watched the crater where the creature had fallen, eyes steady, scope still fixed on a fading glow. His finger rested off the trigger. One bullet, one shot. That was all it ever needed to be. Back at the base, Sarek stood among stunned officers, his gaze directed toward the high ridge where the shot had come. In his hand, a data slate recorded trajectory, the wind models, and the ballistics, but it couldn't explain what made it possible. No algorithm could simulate instinct. He tapped the comm. "Sergeant Voss, are you still operational?" "Still breathing," came the calm reply. There was silence, then a voice soft, unsure. "What do we do now?" Voss looked down the valley, at the scattering swarm and the burning husk of what had once seemed invincible. "Now," he said, "we finish this." The ash from a hive beast's corpse hadn't yet cooled when the command came through. Initiate a full-scale counteroffensive. No reinforcements. No orbital support. The window of advantage was now. With the death of the command node, the Varnak were fractured. Individual units reduced to reflex and fear, no longer a coordinated swarm. It was the first, and possibly the last, opportunity to finish them. On the ridge, Isaac Voss stood alone, scanning the field through a battered scope. The wind had calmed, but the smell of scorched alien flesh still clung to the air. Coalition troops were repositioning below, awkwardly at first, but quickly taking cues from Ghost Division's silent advance. Where once they moved with digital synchronicity, now they watched terrain and cover like hunters, their every step a calculated risk. Lieutenant Sarek arrived with a small detachment, his posture stiffer than usual. Whether from awe or reluctance, it was hard to tell. "Your people have done what our war simulators deem statistically improbable," Sarek admitted. "Our command council considers this engagement an anomaly." "It's not an anomaly," Voss replied, slinging his rifle. "It's what happens when you stop overthinking and start acting." Sarek blinked slowly. "Then we will act." The final Varnak nest was located beneath the ruins of the original refinery complex, an abandoned mining facility once used by human prospectors before the invasion. The entrance was a jagged scar in the earth, half covered in ash and twisted alloy. Coalition maps had flagged it days earlier, but no one dared go deeper. Until now, Ghost Division led the descent. No drones, No scans. Just instinct and the old-school trust of boots on stone. The tunnels were darker here. Quiet, yes, but not silent. Echoes of movement clattered in the distance. Alien chittering. Slime-coated walls throbbed with faint bioluminescent pulses, as if the nest itself was alive and aware of their intrusion. The further they went, the more distorted the Varnak became. Mutated forms, malformed soldiers birthed in panic after a hive beast death. They came in waves, some shrieking, some silent, all unpredictable. Yet Ghost Division moved like a machine. Rena's shots unmissable, Idris setting traps with wire and pressure plates that made Sithri engineers stare in disbelief. Voss was at the point, leading with his rifle like a scalpel. Why aren't they running? Sarek asked as they pushed deeper into the core. They've lost the hive, Voss answered, sweeping his scope toward a rising cluster of egg chambers. But they don't know how to stop. This is instinct now. Death reflex. They reached the heart of the hive 2 hours in. The chamber was massive, natural rock fused with alien growths, forming a kind of cathedral of decay. At its center loomed the final matriarch. Large in the hive beast, more grotesque, yet still. Watching. She didn't move, didn't screech, just stared with a crown of lidless eyes, as though memorizing their faces. No one spoke. The coalition soldiers raised their weapons. Sarek lifted his plasma lance, but his hand shook just slightly. She's not defending herself, he said, voice low. She's not a soldier, Voss murmured. She's a memory. Then why hasn't she fled? Because she knows it's over. But she wants to understand what defeated her. He took a step forward. The rifle came to his shoulder with slow grace. One final motion in a war that had redefined itself. He aimed for the brain cluster just behind the creature's central eye, a soft spot beneath all that hardened bone and carapace. She won't scream, Voss said. She'll just go quiet. He fired. The shot echoed like a verdict through the chamber. The matriarch's head tilted slightly, then dropped. No tremble, no resistance, just collapse. And with her, the hive's final thread was severed. Across the tunnels and on the surface above, Varnak warriors dropped mid-stride. Some convulsed. Others simply went still. Their eyes dimmed, their limbs slackened. Whatever nervous impulse had once bound them to action was gone. A death, not just of a creature, but of a species' presence on this world. When Voss emerged from the tunnels, the sky was blue for the first time in days. Dagon IVs sunburned bright overhead, casting clean shadows across the cratered battlefield. The surviving coalition soldiers stood in formation, silent, watching Ghost Division emerge like revenants. Even the wind had stopped howling. That evening, in the battered remnant of the command dome, Sarek stood before a cross-species council. The floor beneath him was scorched from previous battles. The air smelled of steel and antiseptic, but his voice rang out clear. We expected machines to win this war, he said. We believed the most advanced minds, the sharpest code, the deepest data would determine victory. He paused, eyes falling on Voss, who stood in the back with his rifle across his back and a cigarette between his lips. We were wrong. Victory came from those who listened to the terrain, who trusted in their hands more than their systems. From those who didn't seek to dominate war, but to understand it. Finality, precision, patience. No applause followed, just nods, quiet recognition. A few among the alien ranks looked at Voss with the wary admiration once reserved for apex predators, not fear for their size, but for what they knew and when they chose to act. Later, Ghost Division packed their gear in silence. No celebration, no posturing. They weren't heroes. They were finishers. Rena tightened her pack. Think they'll listen next time? Voss shrugged. They'll try. Then they'll forget. Then we'll remind them. He looked once more toward the horizon, where day-gone sun kissed the ash-covered hills. There would be more wars, more threats, more species who thought human rifles were relics, and that patience was obsolete. And one day, when it mattered again, someone would lie down on a hill, take a breath, and pull a trigger the old way, and the galaxy would remember,